Well, hello everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in and for being part of Tiff 2021. It is with great pleasure that I'm introducing here today Agustina San Martín, the director of To Kill the Beast. Welcome, Agustina.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you for having the movie too.
Oh my gosh, I'm so proud of having the movie at the festival. I have to say that it was the first films that I saw, and since the beginning, I've been an absolute fan of it. And to start the conversation, I wanted, of course, to ask you about uh, the genesis of the story. How did you start? How did you conceive the story, and how did you start working on it?
Yeah. Well, the story started with this idea of this teenage girl entering womanhood, but seeing this coming of age with the opposition between the how she surpasses her fears with sexuality,
Hmm.
and how that is the door to let the darkness behind, and how that is the light for her. That was the main idea
Uh-huh.
of it.
That is fantastic. I think I definitely feel that you created like this atmosphere that is very sensual, where like female desire is at the center of it, but at the same time there's also kind of like terrifying about the atmosphere that you create. Do you want to tell about the like it's very mysterious where everything's happening. You just know that it's kind of like a border town, but you don't know much about it. Can you tell us about the space where you shot, but also like that atmosphere that you created?
Yeah. Um, Physically, the space was the frontier between Argentina and Brazil, in a very particular town called El Soberbio. So that was the inspiration for the town. It is indeed a kind of weird town, or at least that's the vibe that I got every time that I traveled there, and that's why I wanted to shot it there. It's very hard. It's a little bit unapproachable. It's a particular town, and I did seek to do the story for everything to feel a little bit weird whenever she would go through these spaces, since I wanted it to feel like what she was seeing, what she was feeling, and that weirdness that was everyone in town talking about all these rumors, all these stories, and how she would see this from this maybe a little bit of an abstract or subjective perspective.
So when you wrote the story, you had been already in this town, and um, can you tell us like how was the writing process for the script? Did you have this
Yeah.
place already kind of like in mind, or what were other images or things that you had in mind during the writing process?
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because I first wrote it when I was 21. I took it, this movie. This is my first movie, mostly because how long it takes to have funds in Argentina, and also because I was 21. It took me 9 years to make this movie, uh, and so in those 9 years, I was doing my own coming of age.
Mhm.
So so many things started changing within me, and I had the story remained the same, but the approach changed, of the script changed every year, which I
Oh.
think I think I can see that in the movie. I hope people don't see that because that would reveal too much of myself, but um, I think that it definitely grew a lot, and it also grew a lot during the editing, in the editing room, definitely. Yeah.
So it took you 9 years to write it, and for how long were you shooting? Or like for how long was the process and you started like casting and all the
Yeah.
pre-production?
That part took 1 year.
Uh-huh.
Those 9 years were writing, going to residencies or funds, hoping for someone to produce it, knocking on doors, being said no, many stupid amount of times, and then once we had the money, it was all pretty fast from there. We shot it in a month or 5 weeks, um, and after that, we were editing it for a year.
It's interesting because I think that your character has like that same kind of resilience that you have, like with making the movie. Do you want to tell us a bit about the casting process? How did you find
Yeah,
them? And everybody, not only the main characters, but also like in the town, the people
yeah.
from town.
First of all, the aunt. I was looking for for a woman who had a very strong character, and her voice was deep, and she seemed like she could be the owner of a land that everyone is invading and she doesn't care. And so I fell absolutely in love with Ana Brun when I saw her in Las Herederas in
Mhm.
Berlinale, and I was like, yeah, that's her. Also, that particular town, and also it's a specificity in Misiones, in the north of Argentina, that there are people from everywhere in the world. They immigrated to that jungle, so you have a lot of Polish descendants, German descendants, also a lot of native descendants. So there is a complete mixture. So I wanted to show that in this family, um, and that's why the aunt is Ana Brun. The main character, Emilia, we did a very, very long casting. I was very specific, but yet I was still trying to, for whatever appeared, to surprise me. And I think that I felt magnetized with Tamara's face as soon as I saw her. And Juliet, the other girl, we found her in Chile. She was living in Chile, and we did all the castings via videos. So actually, we never could never test them together until we were on the set, which
Oh
was very
wow.
nerve wracking. It was like, okay, I need to make them have sensuality in 3 hours. um, yeah, and the other actors were Brazilian and from the place. We also did a lot of that casting.
What were like the pros and the cons of doing a co-production between so many like Latin American countries? Because like co-production between Argentina, Brazil, and Chile, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Uh, for me, it was all pros because it meant more support for the film. Um, the cons is that we struggle the same things. So maybe if like we're all in the crisis together. So maybe if we had a co-production with someone who was not having an economical crisis at the moment, that would have been nice, refreshing. But at the same time, it was every co-production is welcome in my mindset.
That's awesome. And so you mentioned earlier that in the film changed a lot during the editing process. Can you tell us about like your editor and your like post-production team and how was that how did that feel? How was that process?
Yeah. Well, first we started editing it with Ana Godoy. We worked with her for 3 months. Then, because it was so nerve wracking for me to do this first movie, because I had this obsession that this first movie was gonna write in stone who I was as a film director for the rest of my life and all these dramatic ideas. I got really, really, really obsessed with it, and I started editing alone. I continued editing alone. I have, I had. I'm trying to leave that behind. This mindset of craft, of
Hmm.
for something to be good, even though it's intangible, you can still sew it with your hand and look at it and be alone in silence in your pajamas and drinking a mate and just
Hmm.
touching the over and over and over again. And people were like, "Oh, please stop touching it," and I was like, "I can't. I still I need to feel it." And so that was crazy. And then we brought in Hernan Fernandez, which is and he closed the film with me. He was the editor from Monstruo Dios, my last short film,
Hmm.
and that's how we did this balance.
And what's the kind of like, how do you like working with your editors? Is it like long hours and being very close, or you give them like kind of like freedom and come back to it later?
Yeah. As I said, I want to change this, but I would like to work with an edit. I Here there's a lot of unions, so you have to be really respectful of the work time, which is a bummer for me because if it was for me, when like 8 hours passed and I'm like, no, we just started. Let's have a beer. Let's continue. But yeah, I mean, if it was for me, I don't want to get a second apart from the material. I guess that though I just learned that taking a little break is equally as nurturing as working insanely all the time.
So what are you working on now?
Right now I'm working as a script writer, as a remote script writer for series. And upon my own projects, I'm gonna direct my next. I have 2 movies in the future. One is one that I wrote that is completely absurd, and I'm in love with it. But I think it's such a great idea that I want to do it as a third film because I want to really know what I'm doing when I do it. And so my second one is gonna be the script of someone else.
Okay.
I already have it, and we're already asking for funds, because I guess that's an important part. Learning how to be a good director is to have the process of also telling someone else's story.
Well, this is a very accomplished film, you know, like as a first feature. I think is really nice, and it's very powerful, and as I mentioned before, like I just think that you created an atmosphere that it's remarkable. And so, do you have ideas of where would you like to shoot in the future? Like, do you have like geographical places that you feel like I need to come back here and do something here one day?
Yes, everywhere. I am really something that excites me a lot in life is mixture, and the mixture of languages and ways of speaking and places and characters, and how a lot of different things can cohabit in a space, and how, and I also like things that don't have shapes and don't have specific categories. So in that sense, that was for me very exciting to shoot it in the frontier, this film. And other films, I think it really excites me to do another film. I want to shoot one in Mexico, for example. I want to shoot one in like a Caribbean island, and one in a place with snow. But it excites me to think about shooting movies in different languages, even languages that I don't manage, and have that as a challenge.
That's super interesting. Um, and just to close a little bit our conversation, I wanted to ask you about, now that the film is like completed, and that you know, like, and thank you for sharing with us the world premiere, like, but now that it's going to start having a live in festivals, uh how do you feel like, uh I one of the things that I enjoy the most about the film is the way it sort of like digs into like female desire, but also the control of the female body. um how are you feeling about the way that will be perceived, and do you have any concerns about that perception?
Just before, a question: what do you mean by the control, so that I can answer properly?
Like, I felt that there was a that like you could, this mythological being, this like
Yeah,
something that was there, like out there, I felt that was exercising a lot of like emotional control over like these women, and like it's this like, you know, like all these men sort of like becoming more like closer and closer, and I felt that that was sort of like a way to talk about that, you know, like the
yeah,
control, like this, like the social control of the female mind and body.
yeah, yeah, and also this. this very queer idea when you're still struggling with your own sexuality, that when you still don't accept it as your own, and this feeling also this feeling that it's a beast you need to kill, only to then realize that it's absolutely not. It's something awesome that you should embrace. But apart from that, I am not worried at all about how it's gonna be perceived. I do think that it's not gonna be perceived wrongly, but maybe people are not gonna understand it direct, like, or not gonna care for the association, and maybe that's gonna be the problem in the movie. In that case, that maybe people will not precisely have the association between the beast and this manly figure that is constantly harassing her, and how she's fearing, and also wondering if she's the beast or who is the beast, or whatever. I'm not worried at all. I'm very eager to see more queer cinema and more female desire and female sexuality and sensuality, without the need of justifying it, or without the need of building this romantic relationship like a lesbian Titanic. Like, I didn't care for that. Actually, they don't have a specific relationship. They just talk and then kiss, and suddenly, woo, everything happens. And I was interested also in the formation of this relationship, and not having to explain much. So, and also I think it's my favorite part of the movie, that part in the jungle when we hear them be together, and the camera goes away. So actually, I think that's the part I'm most proud of the movie, and the part that I don't really mind what happens afterwards.
Okay.
The rest I mind. That particular thing, no.
Well, thank you so much. This has been a really nice conversation, and thank you everybody who's tuning to watch the film, and we'll hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Diana. It's awesome, and it's a very big honor to be premiering at TIFF.